a new era in the Iran war. What the first U.S. combat deaths could mean. The U.S. has now suffered its first reported combat deaths in the conflict, a moment that historically can shift both military strategy and public opinion.
Well, it does impact it, but let's really get into first who those individuals were. So the Pentagon identified the 4 service members killed as Tyler Feehan, Angel Rampersad, Isabella Gonzalez, and Michael Swinton. Now, history shows the first American combat deaths often change how a war is viewed. Now, before those casualties, the focus is often on military objectives. Now, afterward, the conversation can shift to what that human cost is and whether the mission is worth it and how long the U.S. really is going to be involved here. We saw that in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam. Each conflict began with expectations of a relatively quick campaign, but evolved as those American losses mounted.
And how does this compare to the early days of other wars?
Well, there's some important parallels here. First, we got Iraq. The first U.S. combat deaths occurred during the opening days of the 2003 invasion. We have Afghanistan. The first American combat fatality came just weeks after operations began in 2001. What's different here is the threat environment. Instead of facing a traditional military, U.S. troops are dealing with missiles, drone swarms, and attacks across multiple countries. Even support bases once considered relatively safe here have been targeted. So military analysts say that means service members could face higher risks than they did at the start of the conflict, even without a large-scale ground invasion.
The prediction market company Kalshi has been making headlines after a White House teleprompter operator is accused of betting on President Trump's speeches. Now, the company is also at the center of a growing legal battle.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what a number of states are arguing as well. Is what is the difference here? So Kalshi lets people buy contracts based on whether an event will happen, including who wins a football game or whether a team advances in the playoffs. To many people, that looks a lot like sports betting, but Kalshi says there's an important legal difference. It isn't licensed as a sports book. It's registered as a federally regulated exchange under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC. The company argues its contracts are financial products, not gambling.
And the classification matters because that's tied to oversight, correct?
Exactly.
That's what these lawsuits are about.
Exactly. So because they say that the label here doesn't change what the customers are actually doing, states including Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Nevada, Washington, Illinois, Kentucky, Arizona, Michigan, and others have challenged Kalshi's sports contracts, saying they function like illegal sports wagers without state gaming licenses. Kalshi has responded by filing lawsuits of its own, saying federal law gives CFTC exclusive authority over these markets. So this isn't really a debate whether people are placing money on sports. It's really a debate over who gets to regulate its state gaming commissions. Is it them or the federal government?
So at its core, when we look at these contracts, the question is, this is a fight about who is in charge of those contracts. And I know that you took a wider picture of what's going on nationwide. Who is winning?
The answer is it really depends on the state. So if you dive into all these lawsuits, it really depends. So some federal courts have sided with Kalshi, saying federal law likely preempts state bans. Just this week, a federal judge blocked Minnesota from enforcing its new law banning prediction markets while the case moves forward. But other courts have been less convinced. A federal judge in New York recently denied Kalshi's request for a preliminary injunction, allowing the state to continue enforcing its gambling laws while litigation continues.
Well, as far as the federal government's concerned, if you're looking from their lens, it seems like they're giving Kalshi a little bit more room to operate, just simply given their model. Tell us more about their response.
Yeah, so the CFTC, they've largely backed Kalshi. So the agency has filed multiple lawsuits against states, saying Congress gave it exclusive jurisdiction over these types of event contracts. At the same time, the CFTC is also considering new rules that could limit certain sports contracts it believes could be too easily manipulated or not in the public interest. Major sports leagues, including the NFL, have asked the agency to tighten those rules. So the big question is no longer whether prediction markets are popular. We know they are. It's whether the courts ultimately decide they're financial markets or if they're gambling.
More homeowners are falling behind on their mortgages. Foreclosures are up more than 20% this year, leaving some people wondering whether this is the start of another housing housing crisis.
Right. And they're absolutely right, at least from what the data shows. So it's unlikely at this moment that we're going to go towards a housing crisis, but the numbers are in fact moving in the wrong direction. New data from Adams shows more than 227,000 properties received a foreclosure filing in the first half of this year, up 21% from last year. But foreclosures fell to historic lows during the pandemic because of mortgage relief programs, and now those protections are gone. This year, 1 in 632 homes had a foreclosure. To get 2008 numbers, there'd have to be another 1.1 million foreclosures. That's a lot to get to, and we likely aren't getting there this year.
Right. Coming off of COVID-19, anything's going to be, of course, a wake-up call. Also, several personal factors as well that are making it difficult to afford the high cost of a home. Get into that.
Yeah. Well, it's less about risky mortgages, as we saw in 2008, and more about home costs in today's economy. Many recent buyers have less financial cushion than longtime homeowners, making them more vulnerable when they experience a setback. These days, there's higher property taxes, rising homeowner insurance, HOA fees, and years of high interest rates. All have stretched household budgets, and, well, long gone are affordable home prices. So we have staggering home prices that buyers sign on to when purchasing a home in the past 10 years, and that leaves little wiggle room for life circumstances to happen. Meanwhile, Americans are still dealing with inflation. Then for some households, the final straw could be job loss or a layoff.
A major COVID flashback is happening on Capitol Hill. After years of clashes, Senator Rand Paul questioned Dr. Anthony Fauci today, appearing under subpoena about the origins of COVID-19 and whether he misled Congress and the American people.
Yeah, the timeline really, it's important here. So let's run through it. So when COVID emerged in late 2019 and early 2020, most public health officials said the leading theory was a natural jump from animals to humans. In February of 2020, a group of scientists published a letter in The Lancet condemning the lab leak theory. Then a paper in Nature concluded the virus was not a laboratory construct. That paper was cited by government officials and news outlets. Now, behind the scenes, emails released show some scientists had privately discussed whether a lab accident was possible before reaching a consensus that natural spillover was more likely. The lab leak theory, it never disappeared, but for much of 2020, social media platforms limited posts promoting it, saying it lacked evidence. Facebook reversed that policy in May of 2021 as the debate evolved.
Yeah, and digging deeper into that debate, specifically on the gain of function research angle, as you know, Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Anthony Fauci fiercely debating on that point, even, just simply the definition of it.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so Fauci has repeatedly said that the best available scientific evidence pointed to a natural origin, while also saying he was keeping an open mind as more evidence emerged. Senator Rand Paul has argued Fauci misled Congress about NIH research in Wuhan, and that research qualified as, quote, gain of function, meaning that research made the virus more infectious or deadlier to humans. Fauci has consistently denied lying to Congress and has said the research in question did not meet the government's definition of gain of function.
So as I mentioned, we still don't have a consensus about how this all originated. Some doubtful we ever will. Break down where federal key agencies stand today.
Yeah, well, you're right. There is no definitive answer. So let's get into it. The U.S. intelligence community has never reached a single conclusion. Several agencies, they continue to assess a natural animal to human spillover that's more likely. Others, including the FBI and the Department of Energy, have said with differing levels of confidence that a laboratory incident is a most likely explanation here. The CIA has also shifted its assessment over time, saying a lab leak is slightly more likely than natural origin, but with low confidence. Low confidence means the available evidence is limited, incomplete, or open to multiple interpretations, not that the conclusion is certain.
Yeah, speaking of multiple interpretations, we know that Senator Rand Paul's focus continues to be whether NIH funded research that's connected to Wuhan and the gain of function research. Run us through his claims and then Dr. Anthony Fauci's response to those claims over the years.
Yeah, so Paul has said that he really wants wants to determine whether federal officials suppressed discussion of the lab leak theory, which NIH-funded research contributed to the pandemic, and whether Dr. Fauci gave false testimony to Congress. Now, Fauci maintains he testified truthfully. He's denied any cover-up and says scientific opinions evolved as new evidence became available. Also, many virologists still believe a natural spillover remains the most likely explanation, while acknowledging that a lab accident cannot be ruled out without greater access to data from China.
And so the debate continues. Morgan, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check Team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com.